I sat at the kitchen table, watching him pour coffee into the same chipped mug he'd used for 3 years, and thought, this time, I won't wait for the apology that never comes. The envelope lay between us. White, crisp, official, divorce papers. In my first life, I had begged. I had cried into that same table, my tears making dark circles on the pale wood, while he told me he needed space to think. While he said her name, Victoria, like it was something sacred. But that was before. Before I died in a hospital room that smelled like disinfectant and failure. My parents standing in the hallway, arguing about funeral costs instead of holding my hand. Before I woke up in this same kitchen, 5 years younger, with the same envelope in front of me and the same man pouring the same coffee, I picked up the pen. You're not even going to read them? His voice carried surprise, maybe disappointment. In my first life, I had read every word, argued every clause, circled things in red pen like I was grading my own destruction. No. The pen moved across the signature line, smooth, final. My handwriting looked different than I remembered, steadier, less desperate. I dated it carefully, March 15th, the day that should have been the beginning of my slow collapse. I slid the papers across the table. His hand froze halfway to his coffee mug. Eleanor, maybe we should... Your lawyer's office opens at 9, I said. You should get there early. I stood. The chair scraped against the floor, a small violence that felt satisfying. In my first life, I had stayed in that chair for 2 hours after he left, staring at nothing, trying to understand where I had failed, trying to calculate the exact moment I had become insufficient. This time, I walked to the bedroom and started packing his things. Not mine, his. The apartment was mine. My name on the lease, my money for the deposit, my furniture from before we met. In my first life, I had let him stay for 3 months after signing, watching him come and go, at strange hours, smelling perfume that wasn't mine, dying by degrees while he lived in my space like a guest who'd overstayed. I folded his shirts with a mechanical precision, placed them in the suitcase I'd bought him for our 2nd anniversary, when I still believed in our future enough to imagine trips we'd take together. The irony tasted like copper. His cologne bottles lined the bathroom counter, expensive ones I'd bought for birthdays and holidays, trying to show love through objects since words never seemed to land right. I swept them into a toiletry bag without ceremony. In my first life, I'd kept one bottle on the counter for months after he left. Would open it sometimes just to remember what it felt like to have someone to miss. My phone buzzed. Victoria, can't wait to see you tonight. Wear the blue shirt I like. I deleted it without responding. In my first life, I had seen that message 3 weeks after he moved out, had driven to her apartment at midnight and stood outside in the rain, watching their shadows move behind thin curtains. Had felt something inside me crack so completely, I couldn't remember what wholeness felt like. Now, I felt nothing. Just the calm clarity of someone who had already died once and understood that some pains weren't worth surviving. By 8:30, his belongings were stacked by the door. 3 boxes, 2 bags, 1 suitcase. The archaeology of a failed marriage fit into containers you could move with 1 trip. I looked at them and thought about how we accumulate things, objects, resentments, small disappointments, until they become the furniture of our lives. He came out of the shower, towel around his waist, and stopped. What is this? Your things. Elena. He said my name like it was a command, like I was supposed to bend to the shape of his expectation. We agreed I'd stay until I found a place. You have a place. Victoria's apartment, the one on 7th Street with the balcony she posts on social media. His face went white, then red. How did you... You should go, I said. Your lawyer's expecting you. I had learned in my first life that anger was exhausting, that shouting required energy I didn't have, that tears only gave them proof of your weakness. So I didn't raise my voice, didn't cry, just stood there in the morning light, dressed and ready for work while he scrambled for words. This isn't fair, he finally said. No, I agreed. It isn't. But I didn't elaborate. Didn't explain that fairness had died the first time he touched her hand, the first time he came home late and blamed traffic, the first time he looked at me like I was an obligation instead of a choice. Didn't tell him I had already lived through this, had already paid the price of his betrayal with years of my life. He dressed quickly, grabbed his phone, left the papers on the table. The door closed behind him with a soft click that sounded like relief. I stood in the sudden silence of the apartment and let it wash over me. No footsteps but mine. No schedule but my own. No constant calculation of his moods. No careful navigation of his expectations. Just space. Empty, clean, mine. I made myself breakfast. Eggs, toast, coffee from the good beans I'd hidden in the back of the cupboard because he always used them up without replacing them. Sat in the kitchen in the sudden quiet and tasted something I'd forgotten. Peace. The morning light came through the window at an angle I'd never noticed before. Or maybe I'd been too busy making breakfast for two. Too distracted by the performance of being a good wife to see the way the sun hit the table. I ate slowly, deliberately, making each bite last. My phone rang at 9:47. Unknown number. Mrs. Hartley? A man's voice, sharp with stress. This is David Brennan, your husband's attorney. Ex-husband, I corrected. The papers are signed. Yes, about that. He cleared his throat. There seems to be some confusion about the terms. No confusion. I signed everything. But you couldn't have understood. He was breathing hard now, like he'd been running. Mrs. Hartley, you just signed away your rights to any shared assets, any alimony, I know. Silence, long enough that I checked to see if the call had dropped. You know? His voice had gone high and thin. You understand that you're entitled to half of... I'm entitled to nothing I don't want, I said. And I don't want anything that has his name attached to it. But your house? My apartment, my name on the lease, renewed it last month. That had been my first change, 2 weeks after I woke up in this second life, making sure the things that were mine stayed mine. The investment account, empty. I checked this morning. I had withdrawn my half yesterday, transferred it to a new account at a different bank. In my first life, I discovered too late that he'd drained it to buy Victoria a car. Mrs. Hartley? His voice had shifted from stress to something like fear. Did you read these papers at all? No. Then, how did you... Experience, I said, and hung up. I could hear him trying to call back, the phone buzzing insistently against the table. I let it ring until it stopped, then turned it face down. There was work to do, a life to rebuild, and his lawyer's panic wasn't part of that equation. At 10:15, my phone rang again. This time I recognised the number. Him. Elena, what the hell did you do? I signed the papers, like you asked. David says... He says you gave up everything. He's saying I could take... He stopped. This isn't what I wanted. No? I kept my voice mild. What did you want? I wanted... He fumbled. I wanted it to be fair. It is fair, I said. You get exactly what you brought to this marriage, and I get my life back. You're not making sense. No. To him, I wouldn't be. He was still living in a world where I would fight for scraps of his attention, where I measured my worth by his moods. He didn't know I'd already died waiting for him to love me the way I loved him. Didn't know I'd spent my last moments in a hospital bed, alone, wondering if things would have been different, if I'd just been prettier, smarter, quieter, louder, less, more, better. Goodbye, I said, and blocked his number. The finality of it felt clean, like closing a book I'd been forcing myself to finish, even though I hated every page. Work was normal. I was a senior analyst at a consulting firm, the kind of job where competence made you invisible and mistakes made you unforgettable. I'd been good at it in my first life, but never exceptional. Too much of my energy had gone to managing his moods, too much of my focus consumed by tracking the small deaths of our marriage. This time, I finished the quarterly report by noon and started on the market analysis that wasn't due for 3 weeks. My manager stopped by my desk at 4. "Eleanor!" Linda was in her 50s, sharp-eyed, the kind of woman who noticed everything. "You seem different." "Different how?" "Focused." She studied me. "Are you okay?" It was the first time anyone had asked me that since I woke up. The question caught in my throat, unexpected kindness in a day of calculated moves. "I'm getting divorced," I said. Her face softened. "Oh, honey, I'm sorry." "I'm not." The words came out clean and true. "I should have done it years ago." She nodded slowly. "Well, if you need anything." Actually, I straightened. "I'd like to apply for the director position, the one that opens next month." In my first life, I had let that opportunity pass. Had told myself I wasn't ready, that I needed to focus on fixing my marriage. That ambition was selfish when my relationship was falling apart. Had watched them give it to Jeremy, who did half my work with twice my confidence. Linda's eyebrows rose. "You're serious?" "Completely." "Then send me your updated resume by Monday," she smiled. "It's about time." I stayed late that night, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Pulled up the director job description and started making notes. In my first life, I would have gone home to an empty apartment, would have sat in the dark wondering where he was, who he was with, whether this was the night he'd finally admit the truth I already knew. Now, I had the office to myself. Quiet, except for the hum of computers, the distant sound of the cleaning crew on another floor. I worked until my eyes burned, mapping out strategies and proposals, channeling everything I'd learned in 5 years of playing small into a plan for taking up space. At 6 homework the next evening, I left the office and went to my parents' house, not because I wanted to, but because some things needed to be closed before they could heal. They lived in the same split level they'd owned my entire life, the kind of house that always felt temporary even though they'd been there for 30 years. My mother answered the door, and her face did what it always did. Scanned me for flaws, found them, catalogued them for later. "Eleanor, you should have called." "I signed the divorce papers today." She blinked, then turned and called into the house. "Richard, your daughter is getting divorced." My father appeared from the living room, newspaper in hand, reading glasses perched on his head. "Already? That was fast." "Yes," I said. "It was." "Well," my mother crossed her arms, "I hope you're satisfied. Your sister's been married for 5 years and never had a single problem." There it was, the comparison that had shaped my entire life. My sister Natalie, perfect Natalie, who married a doctor and had 2 children, and sent Christmas cards with professional photos and never, ever failed at anything visible. In my first life, this conversation had destroyed me. I had cried in their driveway, had begged them to see me as something other than Natalie's disappointing shadow. Had left feeling smaller than when I arrived. This time, I just looked at them. Really looked. Saw 2 people who had never learned to love anything they couldn't display, who had turned parenthood into a competition and wondered why one daughter stopped calling. "You're right," I said. "I'm not Natalie." My mother's face shifted, preparing for the apology she expected, the self-flagellation I'd always offered. "I'm better," I continued, "because I know when something isn't working, and I have the courage to walk away." Silence, the kind that felt like broken glass. "How dare you?" my father started. "I came to tell you I won't be at Sunday dinners anymore," I said, "or holidays, or any family event where I'm expected to apologise for existing." My mother's mouth open, closed. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. I felt light, untethered. You're welcome to call if you ever want to know me as a person, instead of a disappointment. But I won't wait for it. I turned and walked back to my car. Didn't look back. Heard my father shouting something about respect. My mother's voice rising in indignation. Let it fade behind me like old music from a station I'd finally changed. The drive home felt longer than usual. Every stoplight, every turn gave me time to second-guess myself. But underneath the doubt was something stronger. The absolute certainty that I had done what needed to be done. That some relationships were built on foundations too cracked to repair, and the kindest thing was to stop pretending otherwise. That night, I sat in my apartment, just mine now, all mine, and felt the edges of my new life settling into place. No one coming home late, no one to cook for, clean for, arrange my schedule around. No one measuring me against impossible standards, just me, and the quiet and the peace I died without. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Elena? Victoria's voice, uncertain. This is Victoria. I think we should talk. No, I said, but he's yours now, I said. Completely yours. All the late nights, all the excuses, all the ways he'll make you feel like you're never quite enough. Congratulations. I don't understand. You will, I said and hung up. I thought about her sometimes in the days that followed. Wondered if she felt victorious, if she thought she'd won something worth winning. In my first life, I'd hated her with an intensity that consumed me. Had spent hours imagining confrontations, revenge, justice. Now I just felt sorry for her. She was about to learn what I'd already survived. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls. 12 from him, 3 from David the lawyer, 2 from Victoria. I deleted the voicemails without listening and went for a run. Running had been something I'd abandoned in my marriage. He didn't like me leaving early in the morning, said it made him feel abandoned. So I'd stopped, had let my body soften and my lungs forget what strength felt like. Now I ran through the park as the sun rose, pushed until my legs burned and my breath came hard, and felt alive in a way I'd forgotten was possible. The path wound through trees just beginning to bud with spring, past the pond where ducks gathered in the morning, around the hill that made my calves scream. I ran until the voices in my head, his, my parents', my own from my first life, faded into white noise, until there was nothing but breath and motion, and the simple animal pleasure of a body working the way it was meant to. At work, I found an email from Linda. Conference room B, 9 a.m. Bring your ideas for the director role. The meeting lasted 2 hours. I presented the restructuring plan I'd been thinking about for 3 years but never voiced, the client acquisition strategy I drafted and deleted a dozen times, the efficiency improvements I'd noticed but assumed weren't my place to mention. Linda listened to everything, took notes, asked hard questions that I answered with confidence I didn't know I had. You've been thinking about this, she said finally, for a long time. Why didn't you bring it up before? Because I was dying, I thought. Because I was spending all my energy trying to be enough for someone who had already decided I wasn't. Because I had forgotten I was allowed to want things. Timing, I said instead. She smiled. The position is yours, pending board approval, but that's a formality. I walked back to my desk, feeling like I was moving through water. Not drowning, floating, rising toward a surface I'd thought I'd never reach. My phone rang. David the lawyer again. Mrs. Hartley, please, I need you to understand what you've done. I understand perfectly. Your husband he's in my office right now, and he's... A crash in the background shouting. He's claiming you tricked him, that you knew about clauses he didn't understand. He wants to contest the papers. I could picture it. Him in David's office, face red, voice raised, demanding to undo what he'd asked for in the first place. The same man who'd spent 3 years telling me I was too emotional, too reactive, too much. Now losing control because he'd finally faced a consequence. He signed them too. Sue, I said. Yes, but... And he's a grown man with a college degree who chose not to read what he was signing. I kept my voice level. If he has a problem with the terms, he should have paid attention. He's saying you deliberately... I deliberately signed papers he presented to me, I interrupted. Papers his lawyer drafted. Papers he told me would give us both a clean start. If those papers don't say what he thought they said, that's between him and you. More shouting in the background. Something else breaking. David's voice muffled as he spoke to someone else, trying to calm him down. I waited, patient while chaos unfolded in an office 50 blocks away. Then, back to me. He wants to know what you want. Nothing, I said. I want absolutely nothing from him. That's not... People don't... He sounded genuinely confused. There must be something. Tell him I want what he gave me in our marriage, I said, which is exactly what I took from the divorce. Nothing at all. I hung up and turned off my phone. The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings and emails and normal work that felt extraordinary because I could focus on it completely. No part of my mind was tracking his location, anticipating his mood, preparing explanations for his anger. I was just present, fully here, for the first time in years. The week passed in a strange haze of normalcy. Work, running, grocery shopping for one, reading books I'd abandoned years ago, small acts of reclamation that felt larger than they were. I bought new sheets, pale blue instead of the white he'd insisted on because they matched his aesthetic. Hung pictures I'd kept in storage because he said they didn't fit the apartment's vibe. Played music loudly, ate dinner at odd hours, left dishes in the sink overnight just because I could. Each small defiance felt like freedom. On Friday, I found Natalie waiting outside my office building. She looked perfect, as always. Hair styled, makeup flawless, designer bag on her arm. The kind of perfection that required hours of maintenance and constant vigilance. "Mom called," she said. I figured. "She's upset." "I know." Natalie studied me. "You really told them off?" "I told them the truth." She looked away, and for a moment something crossed her face that might have been envy. "Must be nice." "What?" "Being able to just walk away." She laughed, but it sounded hollow. "I can't remember the last time I did something just because I wanted to." I looked at my sister, really looked, and saw what I'd been too consumed by comparison to see before. The tightness around her eyes, the way her smile never quite reached them, the phone she checked constantly like she was expecting bad news. "You could," I said. "Could what?" "Walk away. Choose yourself." She shook her head. "It's not that simple." "It never is," I agreed. "But it's possible." She looked at me for a long moment. "Did it hurt, leaving everything behind?" "Yes," I said, "but staying hurt more." She nodded slowly, like I'd confirmed something she already knew. Then she got into her car without another word. I watched her drive away and wondered if she'd remember this conversation, if she'd wake up one day and realise that perfection was just another cage. The divorce was finalised in 30 days. Quick, clean, painless. David sent the papers via courier with a note that said simply, "Your ex-husband wants you to know he's sorry." I threw the note away and kept the papers, put them in a folder labelled closed chapters, and filed them in the back of my desk drawer. But I kept thinking about that note, about what sorry meant when it came too late, when it was offered not sure as a gift, but as a transaction. He was sorry now that he'd lost something. Not sorry for the years of small cruelties, not sorry for the betrayal, not sorry for the way he'd watched me shrink and done nothing to help me grow. Just sorry that signing papers without reading them had consequences. 3 months later, I was sitting in my new office, director title, corner windows, view of the park, when Linda knocked. "There's someone here to see you." Her voice was careful. "Says it's personal." He stood in the doorway of the conference room looking diminished. Smaller somehow, like confidence had been the thing holding him upright and now it was gone. "Elena." I didn't stand, didn't smile, just looked at him with the calm interest you'd give a stranger. "I need to talk to you." "No," I said. "You don't." "Please." His voice cracked. "I made a mistake." "Several, probably. I mean, with us. With you." I didn't understand what I was giving up. I leaned back in my chair, looked at him across the polished conference table and felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no satisfaction. Just the blank calm of a closed door. "What happened?" I asked. Not because I cared, but because I was curious what shape his regret had taken. "Victoria and I..." He stopped. "It's not what I thought. She's not..." "Not what? Not the fantasy you built while you were betraying your wife?" He flinched. "That's not fair." "Probably not," I agreed, "but it's accurate." "I want to try again." He looked at me with something that might have been hope. "We could start over. Do it right this time." In my first life, I might have said yes. Might have let hope override memory. Let loneliness convince me that his regret meant change. Might have opened the door to a second round of the same slow destruction. "No," I said. "Eleanor, you don't want me," I said. "You want the version of me that made you feel like a good person. The one who asked for so little that you could pretend your scraps were generosity. That's not true." "It is true." I stood. "And that version is dead. Buried. Gone." He stared at me. "You're different." "Yes." "What happened to you?" "I died," I thought. Died alone and unmourned and woke up with a second chance to be someone I actually liked. "I grew up," I said instead. "Now leave." He didn't move immediately. Just stood there, looking around my office, like he was trying to reconcile this version of me with the one he remembered. The photographs on my desk. Me at a conference, me with Linda and the team, me crossing a finish line at a 5K, none of him. No trace that he'd ever existed in my life. "I don't recognize you anymore," he said finally. "Good," I said. "That's the point." He left. I watched him go and felt something settle in my chest. Closure, maybe. Or just the absence of weight I'd carried so long I'd forgotten it wasn't part of me. That night, I went home to my apartment, cooked myself dinner, nothing fancy, just pasta and vegetables and wine I didn't have to share. Sat on my couch in comfortable silence and thought about the life I was building. Different than the one I'd planned. Smaller in some ways, larger in others. No husband, no family dinners, no perfect sister to measure myself against. But also, no betrayal, no diminishment, no slow erosion of self-worth. Just me, and the quiet, and the absolute certainty that I would never again make myself small to fit someone else's expectations. My phone buzzed. "Linda, drinks tomorrow to celebrate the new contract you landed?" I smiled. "Absolutely." 6 months after the divorce, I ran into Victoria at a coffee shop. She looked tired, hair pulled back, no makeup, dark circles under her eyes. She saw me and froze. "Eleanor?" "Victoria." We stood in line together, that awkward proximity of people who share a history but not a connection. "I'm sorry," she said finally, "for what we did, It was wrong. Yes, I agreed. It was. He talks about you constantly, about how you've changed, how you're doing so well. I thought about that, about him watching my life from a distance, seeing what I'd become without him. There was justice in it, I supposed. Symmetry. How are you? I asked. She laughed, sharp and bitter. He's exactly like you said, never satisfied, always looking at his phone, coming home late. She stopped. I'm leaving him. Good, I said. She looked surprised. You're not... I thought you'd... I hope you find what you're looking for, I said and meant it, just not at someone else's expense. I got my coffee and left. Didn't look back. Didn't need to. A year after I signed the papers, I was promoted again. Senior director. My office got bigger, my salary got larger, and my work got more interesting. I hired 2 new analysts and mentored them the way I wished someone had mentored me. Taught them that ambition wasn't selfish, that boundaries weren't cruel, that choosing yourself wasn't the same as being alone. I dated occasionally. Nothing serious, just dinners and conversations and the slow relearning of what it meant to be seen. Some were nice, some weren't. None of them were him. And that was enough. I called Natalie one Tuesday afternoon, impulse dialing during my lunch break. Elena? She sounded surprised. Is everything okay? Everything's fine. I just wanted to talk. Silence. Then, oh. We talked for an hour, about nothing important. Work, weather, a book she'd read. But underneath the magi, something shifting. The beginning, maybe, of a relationship that wasn't built on comparison. I left him, she said as we were hanging up. The doctor? Yes? Her voice was quiet but steady. You were right about choosing yourself. How does it feel? She laughed. Terrifying, but good. I smiled. That sounds about right. My parents never called. I stopped expecting them to. Stopped checking my phone for messages that would never come. Stopped composing imaginary conversations where they apologized and I forgave them. Some distances were permanent and that was okay. 2 years after the divorce, I was sitting in my apartment on a Saturday morning, drinking coffee and reading the paper, when I realized I was happy. Not dramatically, not performatively, just quietly, genuinely content with the shape of my life. The realization felt like sunlight after long darkness. Like waking up and remembering that you survived something you thought would kill you. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Is this Elena Hartley? A woman's voice, professional. Yes. This is Amanda Cross from the Community Giving Foundation. Your application for our board of directors has been accepted. I had applied on a whim, wanting to do something with the money I'd been saving, wanting to turn my second chance into something that mattered. Thank you, I said. We're excited to have you. Your experience with corporate restructuring will be invaluable, and your personal story. She paused. Well, we think you'll bring a unique perspective on second chances. After we hung up, I sat for a moment in the quiet of my apartment. Thought about the woman I'd been in my first life. Desperate, diminishing, dying by degrees. Thought about the woman I was now. Whole, independent, alive. The distance between them felt infinite. That afternoon, I went running in the park. The same route I'd been running for 2 years, but it felt different somehow. Lighter. Like I'd finally put down something heavy I hadn't realized I was carrying. I ran past couples holding hands, families feeding ducks, old men playing chess. Ran past all the ordinary moments of living and felt grateful to be part of them. When I got home, I found an envelope taped to my door. No return address, just my name in handwriting I recognized. Inside, a single sheet of paper. His handwriting, rushed and messy. Eleanor, I understand now what I couldn't see before. You didn't trick me. you freed us both. You freed yourself from a marriage where you were dying by degrees, and you freed me from the delusion that I could have what I wanted without paying the cost. Victoria left me 6 months ago. My parents stopped speaking to me when they learned the truth. My job, the one your connections helped me get, let me go last month. I'm not writing to ask for anything, just to tell you that I finally understand what you meant when you said some prices aren't worth paying. You were right about everything. I hope you're happy. You deserve to be. Jay. I read it twice. Then I took it to the kitchen, held it over the sink and burned it with a match from the drawer. Watched the paper curl and blacken, watched his words turn to ash. Not out of anger, not out of bitterness, just out of the simple knowledge that some chapters need to be closed completely before you can move forward. The smoke rose toward the window, grey and dissipating. I washed the ashes down the drain and returned to my living room. Outside, the sun was setting. Inside, everything was quiet. I sat on my couch with a cup of tea and my book, and the absolute certainty that I had made the right choice. That walking away had been the bravest thing I'd ever done. That dying once had taught me how to live. And, in the stillness of my apartment, surrounded by the life I'd built from the ashes of the one that destroyed me, I felt something I'd never felt in my first life. Complete.